Hi guys, my name is Annalie and in this video I'm going to talk about something that I've wanted to make a video about for a really long time, and I don't know why I haven't done this before really, but anyway, that thing is synesthesia. If you Google the word synesthesia and you go on the Wikipedia page for it, the definition of it says that it's a neurological phenomenon in which stimulation of one sensory or cognitive pathway leads to automatic involuntary experiences in a second sensory or cognitive pathway, which is really wordy, but basically in this video I'm going to put that in my own words and tell you about my own experiences and the way they affect me, because every person with synesthesia is different, so I thought I would just talk about the bits that are relevant to me. So without all those fancy words, synesthesia is a thing in my brain that makes my senses get mixed up and causes me to see things and experience things that other people can't see. There are loads of different types of synesthesia and loads of different ways a person's senses can get mixed up. I have, as far as I know, I have 4 types, and these are sound, colour, which is also known as chromesthesia, grapheme colour, which is coloured letters and numbers, pain colour, and something, I'm not sure if it's synesthesia, but I'm pretty sure it is something to do with the way time is laid out in my head and the way I think of the progression of time. So I think that's either sequence space or time space, I don't know, but I'm going to explain that again in a little bit. Sound colour was the first type of synesthesia I discovered I had, and it's really common among synesthetes, which is just a word for people with synesthesia. I often describe it as being able to hear colours, so basically whenever I hear any sound at all, whether it's music or a car or birds tweeting or people talking or any sort of sound at all, my brain will translate that into a colour and I can see it in my mind. I have been able to hear colours, as I say, for as long as I can remember, but I used to think that everybody did that until when I was about 13 or 14. I heard Fireflies by Owl City, and I remember thinking that it was so colourful and so pretty, and it had all these different colours like flashing up at once on a sort of musky pink background, and I remember thinking, wow, that is so beautiful. And then I realised that I'd never heard anybody else talk about music in terms of the colour it made, and I realised that it was just me that could do that. At first I thought it was my imagination. I've always had a really active imagination, so I just put it down to that and didn't think much of it. But a few years later I was describing it to a few people I went to college with, and one of them said, actually, I've heard of that, there's a word for that, it's called synesthesia. And I was like, wow, I'm not the only person who does this, it's a real thing, it's not just in my imagination, and you know, I'm not making it up, it's really there. Because I tried to like turn off the colours before and listen to music without thinking about what colour it was, but I couldn't do it. Whenever I hear anything, the colour is just there, and that's where the involuntary bit in the other definition comes in. The next type of synesthesia I discovered I had was grapheme colour, which again is having a different colour for every letter of the alphabet or every number, and it's actually the number 1 most common type of synesthesia. And for me it's a lot stronger with numbers. So I noticed really that this was synesthesia for me when people would talk about the year 2012, because that was the year we were supposedly all going to die, and so it would come up a lot, and I remember thinking it was really red, because the number 2 for me is red, so when people would say it I would think red, black for 0, white for the number 1, and then red again for the second 2, so red, black, white, red. And then obviously we didn't die, life went on, and it turned into 2013 and the colour of the year changed for me. It turned green for the number 3 on the end, and I thought, oh, actually that's synesthesia again. So the third type is the space one, the time one. Again, I'm not entirely sure that this is synesthesia, but I've tried to explain it to other people and they look at me like I'm weird, so I assume that it's my way of thinking about things and it's caused by synesthesia. Basically, to me, time, well, the future is to my left and the past is to my right, but time doesn't go in a straight line like everybody tells you it does. It curves away from me in two directions, so it's a bit like an S shape. But I tried to draw a diagram of this. I tried really hard, but because I know it's confusing and I know it's hard to explain and I know you probably can't visualize what I'm talking about, so I tried to draw a diagram and it was so hard. Got really frustrated with it, and that's the reason I never tried to draw what I see. I never tried to draw pictures of music or paint anything because I'm never happy with the result and I just get really super frustrated. So I know my descriptions are really vague, but I wish I could show you what was actually in my head, but I can't. Last type, the fourth type I have, is pain colour, which is fairly self-explanatory and works in the same way as the sound colour. If you know me, you'll know that I'm in pain quite a lot, and when I have back pain, which is my personal most common type of pain, it's red, bright red, and again I sort of visualise this bright, really vivid red patch on the bottom of my back. If I press on it, which I often do, you might have seen me do it if you know me, if I press on it like this, it will turn to a sort of dark blue navy colour. So I've explained all my personal types really quickly, and I thought I'd go into a bit more detail about how they affect me really. So I suppose the most obvious thing and the most common thing that happens to me is the way it affects my taste in music. And I've noticed that electronic music and sort of, I would suppose, artificial music makes the brightest, most vivid and most interesting to look at colours. I think this is literally because it is artificial, because if I think of more acoustic and I suppose sort of natural, more traditional instruments like a guitar, an acoustic guitar, everything a guitar makes tends to be yellow. So if you have an E minor chord, it's dark green, but it also at the same time it is tinged with yellow. And I know it kind of doesn't make sense to say that one sound would make two or sometimes three or four colours at the same time, but it does, and I can't explain that, and that's just the way it works. So E minor is dark green and yellow, and then you would have maybe a D chord which is light blue and also yellow. So everything a guitar makes is ever so slightly tinged with yellow. If you have an electric guitar, you can get a lot more of a range of colours. And so I tend to like more dance music, more computer produced stuff, pop music basically. There are exceptions obviously, but that is mostly, if you look on my iPod, what you will find. If I was going to give examples of music that has been in the charts recently, I'm trying to think of music most people who are watching this video would have heard of. So Rather Be by Clean Bandit, that's quite recent. It's mainly like red, blue and green, but the way the colours move, and yeah, it's quite interesting to look at. Taylor Swift's new song, that's great. The colours aren't really bright, they're sort of darker, but again the way they moved and the way the song is like constructed is really interesting to look at. So that's more dark purple, dark blue and like a really deep earthy green. I'm going to put loads of links to songs that I like because of the reactions I get from them, but not all music is nice, and there are genres and songs and things that just produce horrible things. I like music to be colourful, but there is such a thing as too much colour and too much going on at once, and when that happens it can be extremely uncomfortable and it can actually really hurt my head. So when I say hurt, I mean it can be anything from feeling slightly uncomfortable and not liking it because it's a bit weird in my head, or actually feeling physical pain, like an instant headache, like sometimes a really sharp pain just going through my head because what is going on is too much. And I'm also going to put in the description box a link to a song that my brother used to love, and I absolutely hate it because of the reason it would give me really extreme pain. And he used to love this song, he used to play it all the time, and he used to play it really inappropriately loudly, and I used to scream at him and throw things at him and be quite violent because I wanted him to turn it off, because I could not stand the way it made me feel, and it really it was just awful, it was horrible. But again, that doesn't happen very often, and you can listen to that song at your own peril. It's just not very nice at all. Okay, so I'm going to move on to something more pleasant now, because just thinking about that experience of that song makes me feel really angry. So I'm going to talk about something nicer. Another reaction that I love is when I listen to people's voices. I get a range of reactions and a range of colours, and voices are really hard to describe. They are a bit like a colour palette where you have shades and colours that complement each other but are totally different from one another. And the colour of someone's voice can change depending on a lot of things, depending on their emotion, depending on what they're talking about, whether they're talking loudly or quietly, what situation they're in, whether they're ill. Basically anything that would change your voice naturally will change the colour that your voice makes to me. So naturally, accents and people with different accents would evoke different colours for me. So English accents, well, that doesn't really make sense actually. There's not really such thing as an English accent, but I'm from Hampshire, so I'll just go for the voices that I hear on a regular basis. The people from my area speak with sort of cream, sort of almost magnolia voices, with green, and I would say dull red, not pink, but just a sort of matte red accents and highlights to them. So if you have someone who's not from this area, someone who's from up north, or someone from a different country, they would have a completely different coloured voice. And I think this is one of the reasons why I like languages so much, because again, if you listen to something in a different language, that is going to change the colour of it, because the words and the pronunciation and the tonation sounds completely different, and that's going to make different colours for me. So when I meet someone that has an interesting accent, I quite like to just stand there and listen to them for a little bit to see how the colours that their voice makes differ from what I'm used to hearing all the time. So to give you another example of another accent, I have Irish family, and their accents tend to have a lot more green in them, and I know it's so stereotypical to associate Irish people with the colour green, but again, that's just the way it is in my head. And again, with languages, they look different when they're written on the page as well. So with that would be the grapheme colour changing the letters of the alphabet. Different languages they put words together in a different way, and things that are common in English and spelling rules that are common in English obviously don't apply to other languages. So when I look at other languages, I often think, oh yeah, that looks really nice, that's really pretty, that makes a good colour, yeah, and I have no idea what it says, but some things I just like to look at. So that's really all I have to talk about. Well, it's not. I could talk about this for hours, literally. It's one of my favourite subjects, and if you have any questions, please ask me, because I do love talking about this. But I think that's enough for today. One of the reasons I wanted to make this video was because when I was younger, I felt like I couldn't talk about synesthesia, and I would tell people about this and they would look at me like I was really strange, or like I was crazy, like I'd said something completely irrational and bizarre. But as I've got older, I think people around me have just maybe come across synesthesia more, read about it more, and now they don't look at me like I'm weird. If I mention it to them, they're more likely to go, oh yeah, that's really cool, rather than, what are you talking about? So that's why I wanted to make this video. I really hope it's made sense, because again, I know it's really hard to explain, but I really wanted to put this out there. And if you're interested, if you've made it this far to the end, thank you, and you want to know more, I will put loads of links in the description box of websites that explain it more, of blogs and articles that explain it, and a couple of books as well. There are a few fiction books that have characters in with synesthesia that are quite interesting, that could probably describe it in a lot more detail than me. This is honestly one of my favourite subjects, and I could talk about it for hours, but I'm not going to. So if you've made it to the end of this video, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed it, and goodbye!